your mind, lost
on a scout up in that area to learn what the area looked like. And we went through Suffern, I remember, and stopped and had a very lovely dinner at this very great Mexican restaurant.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. It's right next to a CVS. It's like
Maybe it's right downtown, right in the little main street. It's like there's a little main street area with a slight incline before you go up in the more rural areas, and it's just a very cozy place.
it's a really interesting place because it was originally built by blue collar.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of blue collar and primarily immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my dad was an immigrant from Morocco. He lived in Brooklyn, and then my parents moved out to Rockland County.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of cool because my dad, you know, he used to interact with like, he did plumbing and heating, so he used to have people that were Ecuadorian, that were Puerto Rican, and a lot of them, like their grandfather was born there.
Oh, wow.
You know, so there was already like generations that were already being developed, and that's something that's so heartwarming, right? Because I know as like a filmmaker, sometimes when you put yourself in those like films of where you know it's a dynamic between two people, you know, and you're in this like small setting, that part of that environment plays a key role in that story and how it progresses, you know, and how you as the audience interacts with it. And I like being able to live through that and then see that on film is just amazing because I could put those two parallels together.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always try to teach or at least approach a story as if the place is its own character, because it is. It does have its own life and its own energy, and it definitely affects the people that are in the film and the characters, because, I mean, we're all affected by the weather and what we have access to, what we don't have access to, how we get to and fro. It informs, you know, our daily lives. So I definitely try to, you know, remember that it is, you know, a place where, you know, people live, and it's, you know.
It is, and it's so heartwarming because sometimes some of like really great films, the story doesn't really add up or make any sense. But it's like the environment that's, you know, I'm a Quentin Tarantino fan, you know, and I love like Kill Bill and Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction makes no sense as a story at all from start to finish. But it's the character development. It's like the different scenes that you're going through, like, you know, when they're sitting in the diner, when they're in the room, and like you said, like almost the environment is the story that you're watching.
Absolutely. I mean, production designers, I think, I think slowly some of their work is coming to the forefront. And I know that when there's amazing production design, you kind of quote unquote don't notice it because it creates such a real place that it's not distracting. It all blends in perfectly. But that's when, you know, the work of a great artist, of a production designer, and that's what they are. I mean, they bring the spaces to life, whether they build the sets or they walk into someone's home and, you know, dress it, change paint, for whatever reason. Everything they do has a motivation. So when you're watching a film and look at a painting that they put on the wall, or what kind of wallpaper's in a room, or why that couch, or why that lamp, it was all a choice by the artists in kind of diving into the skin of the characters to create this place that looks so lived in. And I think they're such true amazing special artists are production designers, because they're amazing. They're jack of all trades beyond belief. I mean, they could build anything, recreate anything, paint, dress, do anything, but then they also have a very artistic mind to be able to understand, and the breadth of knowledge that they have between like period pieces and, you know, what kind of clothes people wore, working with the costume designer, everything.
that gets lost so easily. There's a lot of like, I'm not gonna, there's a lot of stuff, so it's hard to name, but there's a lot of productions that are period based, like in the
Yeah.
70s or 80s, and they do it too well, like way too well, where you're like, yeah, that Walkman looks a little too new
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
1984. Like that, like Chevy Citation, like, yeah, somebody restored that. Like, that's not
Mhm.
a that's not a new car.
Mhm.
But they're like those elements of those shows where it's a period piece, but it almost feels modern. Like
Mhm.
you're watching it and like the characters, they kind of dress and look similar to how we look, but it's still the 70s. Like you
Mhm.
still have those cars, but like they're not as new and run, because like these people are either like poor or whatever the case may be, but like you feel more present. That's what I'm trying to get
Mhm.
at. You feel more present and you resonate with the story a lot better.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so too. It's why it takes a village to make a film. It takes so many different artists. I know that a lot of times you just hear about the director or the actors, but it takes a huge village of people to pull off this feat of recreating a world. So I think it's amazing when there's so many big crews that come together to do it, and I think it's equally amazing when you hear about a film made with a skeleton crew of like 10 people and do it. So either way, it's quite a feat.
It is. And I think what's really fascinating is when you take the idea of a book or a story, you can go even as far as a play.
Hmm.
And when it's adapted to a film, a lot of the times, and I have this sometimes jumping, like, why isn't it like the book? You know,
Hmm.
like, why are there so many differences? I think it's because when you have a book, you're reading it and you're kind of creating the story in your head. And like
Hmm.
you've mentioned, it takes a village to be able to make these films
Hmm.
and TV shows. So when you have to take that story and adapt it to
Hmm.
film, artists have to think out of the box. Like,
Hmm.
okay, this writer explained the couch in 10 sentences. We're not going to have a scene where we're staring at a couch
Hmm.
for 35 seconds. I mean, as cool as that sounds, it doesn't really line up with the story. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So there has to be like that almost adaptability where it's still the story, but it's a different adaptation of how it's being told.
Yeah, that's why it's an adaptation. You can sit and read a book for 5, 8 hours. You're not going to watch that much of a film and only get to, the middle of it. So, most films average anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours and a half these days. And a lot of books and things too have such multiple storylines. I think you really have to quote kill your darlings when you're adapting books because you can't have everything in it. So that's when you start to combine characters, or some characters don't exist in the movie that were in the book. You just don't have enough what I call screen real estate to have everyone live in the story that you put on screen. But that's why we have books. That's why we have movies. They're different art forms, and they give uh, the person a different experience when they go through it. There's definitely times when I'm like, oh yeah, I'd like to read a book, and there's definitely times when I'm like, I'd like to watch a movie. So I think that they all can exist together for sure.
They do. We've had, I would say, like the past couple of years, and you probably have a lot more um, better knowledge and understanding of this, is TV shows changing now to kind of being more of a movie format,
Mm,
where they have now limited series or TV
mhm,
shows where you have 10 episodes and they're each an
mhm,
hour. So technically
mhm,
it's an 8 hour film.
mhm,
But it is, I say this so many times, it's like a double edge of the sword
mhm,
because you can put so much crap in there. Like Book of Boba Fett is a great example. Like Disney's kind of done that, and it's just so much. It's like I kind of wish they just made the movie instead of giving me 10 episodes over and over again and doing this. And then there are those stories that do, like American Primeval is a great example of this on Netflix. They have a limited series and it's a movie and you're watching back to back, but there's a start, there's a finish,
mhm,
it's cohesive, it works well, there's kind of history there. It works. But
mhm,
I feel like that medium is so difficult that people just don't understand. Like, if you don't nail it well enough and like iron it out, you can destroy something so beautiful in just like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think miniseries are, they are their own beast, and it's tough because you have to think about the arc of the entire experience, not just within each episode, but like, where do you want to leave people? Where do you want to pick up with them? How do you keep them staying with you and remembering what's happening, and but yet still want to binge to next episode or come back next week, so to speak. And especially today, audiences don't have the same type of I think mental bandwidth or patience rather to give things a chance. Whereas, like when I was growing up, you just had 5 channels, things were on for 30 minutes or an hour,
You were
and
limited.
you were limited. You had like 5 options, and on a good day, I would have 5 options. Most days, I would have 4, and then the one that the antenna couldn't get the channel that great. So you didn't have as many options.
No, I mean, like
So,
you had like I think The Love Boat was like something like close to 50 minutes, but I think it was like 45 minutes or something like that. There were, but it was still, even in the 90s, it was still very limited. You didn't have
mhm.
anything that stretched more than an hour.
Oh no, 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 no. Yeah,
Like
I mean,
60 was
mhm.
like the cap.
Yeah, I mean, what is it like 21, 23 minutes of TV for a 30-minute show back then? Because you got to have your commercial breaks and everything and
Yeah.
wiggling all those. And you think about when that happens in the series too and stuff. So it's a lot of mental gymnastics that goes into, I think, bringing content of any format to an audience member. And you know, kudos to people that can pull it off, even if it's good, bad, however you want to look at it. Just the ability and the tenacity to just do it is its own kind of win in my book, because it does take so much hard work.
I 100% agree with you. And I think like you take somebody like Ben Stiller, which is a director, and
Mhm.
he was also an actor,
Mhm.
and now he's made a television series like Severance, which is a great example of doing that long phase of a movie and doing it really, really well. It's like the first season compared to the second season, it feels like you're going through chapters and chapters of a
Mhm.
book,
Mhm.
and like you can almost like have like the narrator, it's like um you're basically going through an audible, but it's a visual audible. Uh I don't again like I'm not saying it's an easy feat, but like to your point as well, it can be done, but you have to like take into the idea of like how do we gravitate towards the audience?
Mhm.
How do we keep
Mhm.
this story flowing and cohesive and keeping the character dynamics working well? And it's a hard feat, but I think again, like
Mhm.
that is what filmmaking takes into account. You need
Mhm.
to have that mind, you need to be collaborative, and you
Mhm.
need to be open with artists,
Mhm.
not just business people coming along, accountants, producers. Like everybody's got to get on board,
Mhm.
regardless of if this is a money project or an art project.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, the creative team needs the support of everyone around them.
Hmm.
Everyone needs to be on the same page of knowing what's being made, so you can enable people to do their best work. If they're constantly getting mixed messages because people don't really understand what's happening, then that's very difficult. It's nice when everyone can go in excited and on the same page. That's why, like, I truly feel that anything you get to make 3 times. I mean, you make things in prep or you prepare for it, you're making it there, you make it when you shoot it, and you make it when you edit it. So even still, all those 3 times that you're making moving, series of film, anything, you're making it multiple times, and you have to treat each part of that process with its own unique um, needs.
You have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's something really special that we have as human beings that we're capable and able to do. And I think that when you take like where we had the writers strike and you had artists that were protesting, yeah, there was a lot of like mixed emotions and feelings going in with that. But at the end of the day, when you start controlling the narrative where movies have to align more to what society and norms are in reality, here's here's the tea. It's a movie. It's a TV show. It's a
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
Some stories will have sexual implements in them. Some of them will be very dark. Some of them will be satirical. Some stories will have those elements where racism needs to play into account. Whatever the case may be, it's like if you cannot let artists be artists and be able to create, what we end up is what we've been dealing with for the past 5 years is just absolute garbage, one after the other. And it's like, I'm not the only one that complains about this. Like, I don't even want to go to the movie theater anymore. Like, why waste your time when you know that these writers and artists are not being given the opportunity to create what they really want to be making? Because these producers are like, well, if you do that, then nobody's going to want to watch it because, like, it's going against us. Like, who cares?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not the only one that feels like this. I know that.
Mhm. Well, I think maybe you should look at going to at different theaters.
You're right, right.
Because there's a lot of theaters out there that are promoting work where there's,
Like independent
yeah,
films and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, independent art house theaters where producers are driving a project from development to production and bringing forth people to fulfill, and tell a beautiful story. And they're doing it outside of the mainstream and outside of these studio pressures. So it's, creative career producers that are out there, finding material and saying, like, I want to bring this to a screen, and finding a director or a writer director coming to a producer and being like, hey, I want to make this, you want to come on for the ride. And the producer being like, yeah, this is amazing. Let's go for it. And I mean, these are people that put anywhere from, 1 to 20 years trying to get a film made, and some even more. And, I think those are the people that really believe in the material. Anyone that's willing to, you know, promote and really like grind to make something come true for that long of time has a passion about it. And it's very different than, I don't really come from the studio world, so I can't really speak to the inner workings of it as much, but there is a freedom to it, even though of independent film, even though there is a lot of financial constraints and there's a lot of constraints in terms of opportunities, and it's just really freaking hard. But at least you do have the artistic freedom that a little bit more, which is what I enjoy about projects. Is I like to do projects where either the there's a director that may have written the story, or even if they're not, just has some type of personal connection to the material, because you know that it's going to be coming from a place of truth or earnestness and understanding. And so
100%.
those are things that I think you can feel a difference of when it's something that's made with such passion and heart versus something that might have been, put through the rooms several hundred times with 4,000 different notes coming from 5 different directions. And, you know, everyone's giving notes, and, we could have
I
probably
know.
made like 12 more things with the rounds of notes that everyone's put through.
It really comes down to, like, to your point, where when it comes to indie filmmaking and the underground scene, you run into those people, like, again, we were talking about this earlier, like period pieces,
Mhm,
where you find this, quaint town that's like just great place to film shoot.
mhm,
And you find this really cool mechanic shop that ready restores old cars, and you build a connection with those people in the town.
mhm, mhm,
And you find this old diner that's been like, now the grandkids run the place, and they're like, oh, cool, you want to shoot here? Sure. And some of these films, they're very low budget, under $175,000, even maybe under $100,000 from start to finish. But it still feels like it was made in the 80s. Like I was saying earlier, like
mhm,
it's modern, but you can do a lot of that today also because of the advancement of technology. I mean,
mhm.
when you get into the editing room these days, you used to need a team of like 25 people.
Yeah.
Now you can have a team of 3, maybe 2
Mhm. Or
working
one.
to or just a whole one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think people want it. I mean, look at, the success of, someone in the independent film industry this year that's really kind of a, you know, a person to be celebrated for their journey over decades making films like that. And, Sean Baker and Honora, I think, is a great example of how a filmmaker with such indie roots and his films do exactly what you just talked about. I mean, you look at all his early works, and he still implores that technique in what he does today. He just might have a little bit more money here and there to play with, and now probably I'm hopefully we'll have some bigger budgets and different things to give him more resources to just keep going for it. But he's never lost his sense of the kind of stories he tells and how he tells them. He's a true artist, and I think he's very aspirational for a lot of filmmakers right now, because people that are in the indie understand and know where he comes from. I mean, he edits his films. He writes, he edits, he does a lot of his own casting, and he's done this. Like, I think his first film was made with two people, him and a producer, and it can be done, and it's just about the tenacity and willing to do it. And I think those are the type of artists and filmmakers that we should really start learning and celebrating a bit more, and saying
Um,
their name out loud so that people know who they are and know them very frequently.
I was gonna ask you,
Mhm.
have you watched the film Substance? One with
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
have to say, like, first off, I don't think Demi Moore got enough commemoration for her role. I you know the thing is like it's sometimes so hard to respect like celebrities, like we were talking about, just like what goes on in the industry, and like
Mhm.
there's that nicety that comes into the respect for artists and the project and people surrounding yourself making these films. But when you have a person like that that had been mutilated and destroyed by Hollywood for years,
Mhm.
and she says, "You know what? No, I'm going to do what I want,"
Mhm.
and she did it beautifully.
Mhm.
Like, I felt terrified. I felt connected. Like, and do you think she got any commemoration for that? No, of
Well, I
course
mean,
not.
she won a Golden Globe. You don't want to, like, I wouldn't turn my nose up at that, and an Academy Award nomination. I mean, those are all big things.
Yeah,
I think there's definitely, there is a storyline, that, she didn't win, so therefore, she didn't get the glory. But I think with someone like
right.
her, just like when she gave in her speeches and things, the work is the win,
Hmm.
and the work is the win,
Oh yeah.
and that's at the end of the day. No one's going to take that away from her, and from the director. I mean, what a beautiful, like, that's not
Who was?
necessarily a genre that I go for and everything, but I watched it and was just fascinated from opening scene to the end of, like, wow, this person had a vision, and from start to finish. And you can go online and get the script and look at it. And the script is even written in a very non traditional way where, some of the sound effects, are written in big, bold letters. So it very much breaks tradition, even on the written page, if you look at that script. And I think it also said something too about maybe the wave in which audiences are getting excited by. I don't want to say that Demi's story is a comeback story, because she never went away. Like,
No,
she's always been doing, work and things. And I think
but
as
I
mhm,
think to your point though is it's a stepping stone
mhm,
because there's a lot more eyes now on the underground scene regards to indie films and even with music. And again, I think the internet plays a very key role in this, but I think a lot of people are tired. It's not that people don't have the attention span. It's people are tired of bullshit. It's where, you take, like, for example, my mom grew up in New York in the 70s.
mhm.
She has zero idea of what danger is, even though she grew up in one of the most dangerous cities of the time. It's just attitudes and progression change, and
Mhm,
awareness also plays in the key role. Playing a film like that is very vulnerable,
mhm,
like,
mhm,
regardless for anybody, and there are a lot of those horror and psychological indie films that does that. They bring those people in, like Demi
mhm,
Moore, or maybe people that are a little bit more not as famous, but bring them into those
mhm,
stories, and you see that element that they
mhm,
She could have done this any time in her career,
Mhm.
but she did this with an independent filmmaker.
Mhm. And I think by doing it now, I think it's all about timing. I think that's the
Yes.
one thing. I think that's the one thing that's very difficult as an artist, and even just as a human, is that's the one thing you can't control, and that is really the one thing that I think defines most things in our life, is just the timing in which things happen, like getting the right script at the right time. I mean, we could have a conversation at Demi Moore the same way you could have a conversation about, Pamela Anderson,
Hmm.
and watching her in The Last Showgirl. I mean, we didn't necessarily hear as much about that film as the substance, but she's doing the work too. And, she's been on Broadway, and, she took control of her own narrative. And I think that's what we have to look at, as people that are willing to take that chance, and take the chance on themselves. And like you say, just say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it under these terms. And I think that's where kind of some of the true artistry kind of really shines, and you can see it on screen.
I think that's almost where we get that grandfathering in, where you see those successful filmmakers, directors, like the list goes on, like, Quentin Tarantino, Wes Anderson, for example,
Mhm.
Scorsese,
Mhm.
but they're all grandfathered in to the point where they can. If Tarantino decided tomorrow to make a transvestite movie about flamingo dancers going to Miami, he could make it right now, and
Well,
nobody would have any.
also all those are men.
Right. Like, the thing about it is that there are people that have that ability. But what I'm trying to get at is that just because it took somebody like 30 or 40 years to get there doesn't mean everybody has to go through that same process.
No.
You can establish yourself as a filmmaker, that this is what you make, this is what you
Mhm.
collaborate, and this is what you create, like, regardless of what people think, because a lot of times, like, well, are people going to judge me? Like, are people going to respect my work? It's like, is this what you want to do? Is this what you
Mhm.
want to make? Is this
Mhm.
what you're gravitating towards?
Mhm. Well, I think that's the difference of, when you decide why you want to make something. Like, are you making it to just put some trophies on your shelves and put money in the bank? And if so, that's fine. That can be someone's motive. But, I think there's a difference when some work is coming from a place of someone's heart and intention, and without necessary regard to all those things that you mentioned in terms of what will other people think. Um, I think if any time in life, going through and having to ask yourself what other people think, it's very exhausting and can dilute humans and can dilute art real quick. So I try not to. I'm not going to lie, of course, in my younger days, I definitely thought about it. But as I get older, it's definitely something that becomes a least priority to me, is like, what do other people think? Um, it's more about the intention of why you do something and why you had to do it and felt the need to spend so much time and heart and be so vulnerable about it. I'm sure that, I couldn't imagine what necessarily how that script got to Demi, but I'm sure when she read it, there was some connections in it that she was like, damn, I know this woman, and that's what drew to the material. And I think that's what too makes her performance shine so well, as you can see it, even just when she's walking, and that she does that walking shot so many times in the film. I'm sure they did so many different takes, but every time they cut to that, she has a different feeling, and because she's tracked that character's progression and everything. And in those scenes where she's not even saying things, she's just putting on that coat and walking down that street in LA, and it's like, whoa, what she's feeling in every footstep, and she nails it every time.
It's almost where the character
Mhm.
is the actor.
Mhm.
There are stories and films that you watch, like, I could think of, like, even Taxi Driver.
Mhm.
You know, I can't think of another person to play that actor than, like, Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
It it's just like, when you see it, you're like, wow, okay, like,
Mhm.
that like lines up just so perfectly.
Mhm.
Um,
Again, casting directors, another unsung hero of the filmmaking world. Casting directors, these are the true treasure hunters. Being able to look at a list of names and be like, oh wait, no, look here, think about this, or you should really look at this person and stuff. Like that's a art form as well to see and be able to do that. And that's also in agents and managers know their clients and taste and can see things. And that's exciting. I think that's the fun part, is I call it like the dream phase, is like dreaming what it's going to look like, who's going to be in it, what does it look like. I personally like to write things with people in mind. It just helps me when I write on a page, think about someone's body moving in an image or something. It helps me to kind of go into dreamland a little bit, having someone's kind of face in my head or voice. More specifically, a voice is very helpful to me.
While you were talking about that, I think it's Ma'am. You remember it came out in '74 with Lucille Ball, and it had B. Arthur.
Oh no, I
And
haven't seen it. Mm-mm.
it is one of those films, like we were talking about, like casting,
Mm-hmm.
casting actors to be able to play these roles. Just whoever thought it was genius to put Lucille Ball and B. Arthur in the same.
I mean, I'd love to be in that room.
My God.
Yeah.
Because like you have like these two actors that are they're dominant women. Like Lucille Ball was the dominant woman in the film industry, and you have like B. Arthur, which is, I mean, everybody's heard B. Arthur, all right? Like she's a tall grandma that if you do something bad, you in real trouble.
I mean,
Like
she's a sassy lady. I feel
she
like
is so
I feel
sassy.
like that's half of the answer to one of those questions. Like, oh, if you get to have your last meal with 4 people, who would it be? Like, I'm sure a lot of people would put those 2 people at the same table, Lucille Ball and B. Arthur. That sounds like a good dinner party.
It is, and I like the other twist of things. Like even in that spectrum is like you take somebody like even Audrey Hepburn, which is literally the complete opposite of what Lucille Ball and B. Arthur is. But in reality, she was a very strong woman and very like stern and disciplined, but at the same time very soft, very confident, very strong. And there are actors like that where even if they don't talk, the expression on their face, like we were talking about, Demi Moore just walking with the coat, that is the script. They are in a way like betraying parts of the script, and it's amazing when actors are able to just do that without any words.
Yeah, but I also too think it's something that women have fought a lot against too, is the association that femininity, by having it or being of a certain feminine, outward presenting type of woman, that you are weak or soft, and that's not true at all. And that I don't think a woman's strength can be measured by what you see on the outside of her. Like there's women, whether in 6-inch stilettos or Birkenstocks, no matter what shoes they're walking in, I can tell you they probably have a complex life story, and worth seeing on screen probably. So I think that's something too that like is sadly still part of the conversation, is people sometimes, like you say, being surprised. It's like, oh, and I wouldn't imagine her in that role, or like, so this is so wild. Like when people do the hard 180 in their career every once in a while, it's like, well, they did it. Like, look at them, they got it in them.
I think that also brings an element of change, because when you start working on a new film or a new idea, and this person's also going through the like new stage of progress and also change, you end up like almost like birthing like this incredible baby, that just the story just flows from there. And I think like a big part of storytelling is not just film from A to B, but it's how the story interacts. Like there is such a deep magic that goes on with films. It's you could throw in $50 million worth of CGI, and look where like the Marvel production is now. Like, it's not what makes films great. Is not like, just massive ass budgets. We realize this now. Like, you can make a film for very little, and it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's some of it can be very beautiful. I mean, definitely, I don't think your budget determines your level of artistry by any means. I mean, not at all. I think that, you know, I constantly have to go up against people. It's like, oh well, your movies are just so small, and I hear that word a lot. It's like they're small, or you make these small movies, and I'm like, just because the budget's small, I mean, when you watch them on an iPhone or on a theater screen, I think it's the same size that you're watching a lot of those other movies on.
a lot of
You
a lot of
know?
these small films we're talking about are on
Mhm.
Apple TV right now.
That's right. I mean, that's the
I
one advantage of this whole access, being able to have your film have accessibility. I mean, talk about a blessing and a curse is that accessibility and the saturation of the market. But you're right. They are there. I think that the biggest thing is just trying to encourage publicists, PR, marketing firms, news outlets to devote time to spotlighting those hidden gems, and instead of, like, covering the same movie for 2 weeks that it's already going to have its huge awards campaign and things. It's like, where are those other hidden gems? Like, I'm excited about the investigative reporter of, indie film. It's like someone's out there just literally, like, it's like the old days of Blockbuster. I would go in and dig through the bins wanting to find, like, the most obscure or most, indie looking movie possible. Like, ooh, this looks interesting or wild or just like different. And, it would be nice for those type of films to also get the same type of, publicity so that people can find them. Like, I don't think it's that people don't want them. I just don't think they know how to find them a lot. And so I think
I
that sometimes audiences get a bad rap because, oh, nobody wants to see this. I'm like, well, do they know what's out there?
I think though, like Apple, it's strange that I'm even saying this because like Apple's really not a good company in any shape or form. They're pretty evil when you go down to its core. But it's really bizarre where when it comes to indie filmmaking and indie like music production, there's pretty much like this open platform where they have allowed like now some of the top shows that are on Apple are all indie film. They're all made by indie filmmakers and producers and directors. Um, I maybe I wouldn't say it's coming from out of the goodness of their heart. I think it's coming out what you're saying is they realize
Hmm.
that there's a market here and
Hmm.
people are tired of the other crap.
Yeah, I mean, I think slowly, I think that, I think places might are slowly is trying to, take a play from the A24 book, who is a distributor that's like
Yeah.
really defined
Yeah.
themselves, and they define themselves by being bold and risk
They've
taking and
they've
singular
had
vision.
films. They've had films with crazy budgets. I
Yeah,
mean
but
like
they've also had, like, not so crazy budgets too, and they take risk on emerging on first
yeah.
time, second time
Oh
filmmakers,
yeah.
or maybe, like, taking that first time filmmaker and giving them a nice budget, like saying, like, "Oh, this person has something to say, like, what if we gave them all these toys, what would their sandbox look like?" Right? Like, go for it,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
that would be nice. I would like to, be in that sandbox.
There's one show that I got hooked on. It's made by A24. I think it's Slow Horses.
Oh,
It's
I
a
know of that. Yeah, I haven't seen it though. Yeah.
and like it's just made really well. And I went online just curious to see how much the budget was, and it was just like, really? That's pretty low.
Yeah.
They they really like to your point. It's like you almost like survival of the fittest at its
Mhm.
best shape or form. It's
But that
where
was
like
Apple.
was it Apple?
I think it was Apple. I could be. I'm not going to play Vegas, but I might would double down. I wouldn't go all in on my guess here, but I think it might have been Apple.
Let me see. No, but there was a few there was another show also I was watching that was from A24, but like what's really interesting like with a lot of these films is they're like limited of the areas that they're in. And you can clearly see this. Like, I know, especially when you're filming outside, it can be very costly because you're like limited in
Yeah.
certain spots.
Yeah.
And you notice that like these filmmakers and like producers, they figure out ways of keeping things on the low. Like they do a lot of things at night, which is genius, and it's like it's still kind of great because you're still like watching the story and like really not paying attention. They'll do things on days that are really not busy.
Well, night's expensive though.
Is it really?
Night's crazy expensive. Yeah, I mean, when I made my micro budget movie, that was one rule I had to myself is I will not shoot an exterior night dialogue scene. I can't afford the lights. Like,
That's why, yeah.
I mean, if it's something that shoots at night all the time, ooh, that's a big spend. Night times take lots of lights, lots of people, lots of machines to make night look like something you can turn on your TV and watch. It can get quite
It
costly.
can. It can.
And what's cheapest is, go stand out in the field and, at 11 at sunrise and give someone a camera because the light will register in the camera,
Well,
that that will work.
I think also though it's hard. It's hard when you have where you're dealing with the public too.
Hmm.
You have those scenes where you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
record like in public, and you want to make sure that like nobody's like turning around, and like pulling out their phone. And you're like, oh,
Hmm.
please don't pull out your phone, please, 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 please,
Hmm.
please. Uh, but I think that's great too because you almost where you don't have a lot of options to take many takes,
Hmm.
right? Because for very obvious reasons. So you got to like be very much in the moment. You got to like be fixed, and you'll be like, okay, you ready? Because we're doing this like right now. I get what you're saying too. It's like each environment comes with its own cost.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it
Hmm.
can be very expensive. It can be very difficult. You can either do a
Hmm.
lot of shoots, or you can do very little shoots. You need very expensive equipment or not very expensive
Hmm.
equipment. Like it's a never winning battle.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's no perfect scenario, no
No,
matter. I mean, even if you have, like, you hear about all these crazy budgets, but, you don't know so much of that budget goes towards so many different things that are needed and, salaries and different things, and some of those special effects do take teams of hundreds of people and stuff, and it's just very difficult, so, I think that's why, like, that's what a good producer can do is like see a piece of material and understand what all it needs and make it happen. I mean, talk about the unsung heroes is the career producers that actually know how to make movies from soup to nuts that can make all these things come true. Like I think that's a big misconception about some producers is they're just people that sit in like fancy offices and wear Rolexes, and that's not my experience at all.
you're dealing with people that have basically broke the stone.
Mhm.
I we don't realize this, but for the past 150 years, our society has decided for us to live an industrial lifestyle. We didn't ask for this. I mean, it's great. We've got a lot of benefits. We got refrigeration, we got heating. There's a lot of great, but there's been a heavy cost where almost our humanity has been stripped away from us. Gone are the days of people where they can be much more philosophical, more out of the box, more creative with themselves. And I think almost where there's a resurgence where you can be a person that loves what you do, regardless of what corporate and industrial thinking has put into place. No one's saying it's easy, but
No.
you can find that balance. It takes a lot of work. And I think one thing you have to take into account is when you get older, do you want to be the person that waits till you're 64, 65 years old for that greedy, grubby company to give you that pension? Do you really want to give your life to someone else and expect something in return, or you can do something on your own to be successful that you don't have to go through, that you don't have to wait
Mhm.
on a line, at the DMV for like
Mhm.
5 hours?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard, everyone has their own journey and story and reasons why they have to do things, and, um, I'm interested in the story of that person that did take to 64 to do what they thought, like, what an interesting film that would be is someone that did, quote, unquote do what they were supposed to do for all that time and then finally realize what it's about. That's a very rich story of someone that has a very complex life and conscious about them. That coming to the moment of self-discovery doesn't have to happen at 21. It doesn't have to happen at 33. All these different um, times in which you're supposed to find out who you are. I don't think that we should limit people to have to do it on a certain timeline. I mean, maybe I'm just biased because
No,
I made my film at such a much long older age than a lot of people make first movies, or not necessarily, but at least like not a lot of women might be more apt to make theirs at a later age for a lot of various reasons, but that's a different soapbox. But I wouldn't want to. I don't think I would have wanted to make. I don't think I could have, and nor would it have been quote unquote any good if I'd tried to make a movie 20 years ago. But, I have had to live through moments of, I've worked corporate, I've worked freelance, I've worked independent, the main thing is that I've just had to work. And that's the thing, is I didn't have a choice not to, is I always had to work. And that breeds something that when you always have to work and you finally get a moment where you can take time to say what you want to say, to me that's a story that we should hear, because someone's been sitting and living and breathing it for such a long time. That's not something you can like do a Mad Lib in a room somewhere and win and win some awards for it. That's not going to have the substance that we need. No pun, bringing back it to substance.
it's so true that
Mhm.
you can be successful in any part of your life,
Mhm. I'm
and
hoping. I'm hoping.
no, but it's honestly true. It's what you define as successful. It's
That's right.
because you as yourself can be the most incredible person you can be. The thing that holds us back the most is ourselves.
That's right.
Y- You know, being a successful artist is not necessarily about like how great you are, but it's how much of yourself, how much work you're putting in that's
Mhm.
coming from you. You know, that's like again, like I'm not trying to give disrespect to those accountants and marketing directors and
Yeah.
advertisers. They do great jobs too, but they're not creative thinkers. But they are the type of people that can work coincide with those creative thinkers and take those incredible ideas and monetize them, or
Mhm.
figure out ways of being able to bring it to a broader audience.
Mhm.
It's two different parallels of living your life.
I
It doesn't.
mean, it's the two. I think that we should be careful about saying that people's creativity is only, recognized when we see it happening in their jobs. I mean, that accountant might go home and go in the garage and paint some pretty amazing
Yeah, yeah,
photos.
yeah. No, 100% agree. 100% agree with you. What I was getting at is that like just being an artist is not the only route
No,
to having a loving and successful life. You
no.
can be a person that's an advertiser, and that is something that creatively is something that you're passionate about. You can be somebody that is an architect, and that is
Mhm.
something that you're creative and passionate about. Electrician, that could also, there's a lot of different things like that.
Mhm.
But it's not limiting the idea that nobody's creative. Everybody can be creative. You just have to find what you love and what you can
Yeah.
put towards your
Mhm.
passion towards to
And
make
I think
successful.
the difference is a lot of those jobs and things that you mentioned there are very um, plus and minus of like how the task works. Like, okay, numbers add up to this, and there is a lot of creative accounting. Having done accounting, it's a lot of sleuthing, a lot
It
of like
is
money tells stories, and
moving
marketing.
things around. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's complicated.
marketing is like, I mean, I've watched some ads recently, like, remember when we used to look forward to all the Super Bowl
Yeah,
ads? And,
yeah, yeah.
that stuff's like super crazy cool. But also, like you say, I mean, it's just it's hard when, your creativity can come at different ways. And when you're an artist by what most people think, a writer, a painter, a filmmaker, something like that. The work that we put out there is completely objectionable. If I'm a good electrician, I can get the lights on, and that I was good that day. Like a good day for me, I got the lights on. A good day for a filmmaker, I might can get the lights on, but people's like, I just didn't like that color temperature though, or like, ooh, that wasn't the right light bulb, even though it shone light, or there's always an opinion about it, which is fine. I think that too goes back to what we started the conversation with about knowing your intention when you make something and put that out there, and how to measure it. Like, are you going to feel like you're a failure if someone tells you, well, the lights are on, you still didn't do a good job? Type of situation.
Yeah, and it's also about like that collaborative process where
Hmm.
we're talking about like outside scenes,
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
talking about really expensive lighting. You can have, for example, people that come along, like for example, production managers and such, where they may be able to help the artist and be like, hey, actually, there is cheaper lighting equipment, or hey, I think we can figure out, there's a farmhouse around here. They have pretty large lighting equipment. Maybe we can figure out maybe rental or figure something like that. That type of dynamic right there is an artistic collaborative process.
Hmm.
It's where both sides are that's what I meant by parallels. It's like they're both
Absolutely. Yeah.
figuring out ways of
Hmm.
making this work.
That's creative producing. That's the world that I come from. Is like, why I loved producing so much is, it's nice when a director can say, like, hey, I want to do these things, I just don't know how. And I'm like, well, I can help you figure that out. It's not like I'm going to have all the magic answers, but I can help orchestrate a plan, a schedule, a budget, hire the people. That's producing. That's the career producers that I know, and the work that they put in is they're the ones that figures all that stuff out. Like you say, the production managers are looking at the schedule and it's like, oh gosh, we got these 5 scenes to shoot. We're running out of money. We still need to do it. Everyone's putting on their best thinking cap because we've got to get these 5 pages. And for somehow, that's what movie magic is people figure it out for some magic way. That's the only thing I can't put in a budget is movie magic, which is funny because that's like the popular software you use to make budgets and schedules. it's
Hmm.
called it's called movie magic. um, and that's just something that you just have to get there and let happen, because that's when the great minds come together, when that best boy grip and production designer and everyone get in a circle, and like someone's going to have the answer to the problem, because you got some really cool-minded people that bring different skill sets to the table. And that's one thing that I think that as movie makers we get to do that not a lot of people get to do, is work with such diverse mindsets in a common capacity. It's like we all have the same goal to make a great movie, but we're just all coming at it with such different skills, but we're doing it for all the same reason.
You need to have a lot of patience, and I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
understanding that comes into play, because like we've been talking about from the very beginning, you're dealing with a mix of people.
Oh
You know,
yeah. Oh yeah.
y-
Colorful.
you get colorful. Like you could have that one actor that's just a pain
Oh
in
yeah,
the
they're there.
ass,
Oh yeah.
and they're just making everybody miserable. And
Yes,
and everybody's coming over like, can you talk to them? Like, oh,
that's
and
right.
you're just like, okay, all right, got 2 more weeks of this,
Mhm.
and like we're finished up shop and we're done, and like you have to be able to like be patient, quick to thought, and like
Mhm.
be able to be resilient, because you're not walking into a bed of roses. People like think of like, oh my god, production's so nice. You
Yeah.
get on the bus, you get on the plane,
Mhm.
go out there, you got your own trailer, and there's coffee. Nah, there's a lot of problems that come
No.
along there. Dirty
That's
buses, terrible
yeah.
flights.
That's my least favorite part of making movies, to be quite honest with you, is production. I mean, everything you just said kind of just gives me chills, because you say like, oh, and there's great coffee, and here I am thinking about, yeah, but where are we going to get the power to rig the coffee maker to when
Yeah,
we're
because you're
shooting
in a
that
trailer.
exterior scene? Or I don't even have trailers on my movies. I can't afford them. I've yet to make a film where actors have had
You
trailers.
have tents. You usually set up tents out. Okay.
Well, no, we usually have. will have holding spaces. So if I film in a community, let's say I'm filming at a school, I can film in one classroom, but I'll use the 4 other empty classrooms for holding. Or if I'm filming at a house on Main Street, so to speak, I'll find a church and I'll say, "Hey, church, can I rent out your fellowship hall?" And we'll set up holding, set up base camp.
That's
We'll
actually
cater our meal
genius.
there. Like this is like indie on location filmmaking is that not only do you have your filming locations, but you have all your secondary locations that are your base camp holding, because you got to have somewhere for hair, makeup,
Within the
wardrobe.
vicinity. Yeah.
Yeah, within the vicinity, when the actors aren't working on set, they got to have somewhere to go and sit and study their lines or just relax, whatever they need to do to preserve their energy. Um, and I can't always afford them to be able to go sit in a huge trailer because I can't afford the trailer. I can't afford the driver of the trailer. I can't afford the gas in all the trailers.
Yeah, those buses can be very expensive on fuel.
Oh, every aspect of it. And two, if I get one trailer, I'm not going to have just one actor with the trailer. They're all going to have it. So a lot of times the movies I make is like everyone just has to be on board the same, bandwagon and know what kind of bandwagon we're traveling in. And it's not a Rolls Royce. It's like, look, on a good day, I'm in a used sedan. A used sedan is what I'm dealing
Mm,
with, and we all got to know that when we get in it, it's going to get
Nissan
us where
Villager.
we need. It's going to get us where we need to go, and we're going to be able to drive it a long time, and it'll get us there. But it's not necessarily going to be heated seats along the way.
Well, I think there's almost a humble part of that, whereas yeah, there is a lot of money when it comes to acting, but there's also that humble aspect of we're all in this together.
That's right. Yeah.
Like even the person that's setting up, like, the fake blood spatters on the wall, or the
Oh yeah.
person setting up the like, if that person's not there, there's no scene.
That's right. Everyone
you
has
know,
a role. Everyone
everybody.
has a role. Yeah, if that coffee's not there, people will be mad. So there's that PA, that craft service person. They all have a very important job. And I don't think there's, sure, some jobs get paid more and some jobs take more experience and everything. But it is the one place where every job does have to work like a well oiled machine, because from the moment the sun comes up, people have things to do, whether it's someone driving to pick up an actor and knowing what way to get there so they get back to set on time, knowing how to get to that church and set up holding so that each actor has their own little private dressing space, and the hair makeup wardrobe team has a place to sit up and do hair and makeup, and they're not just by a dumpster or something. Like, you got to
With a
realize.
raccoon coming out.
Yeah, and too, like, you got to like think about, this is what sets the stage for, a performance and things. So I might not be able to have all the luxuries, but I'm going to try to make things nice, I'll make sure the place smells nice, make sure it's clean, and make sure, you have safe drivers, and that we have good food and we have a good time and you're around good people. And I don't think all that has to be equated with super expensive and fancy, because I've been in a lot of super fancy places and not always felt so happy.
Yeah, honestly, some of the some of the greatest moments, some of the greatest memories that you have are sometimes some of the simplest.
Oh,
And it,
absolutely.
you know, it,
Absolutely.
it's like, when you go to you go to the grocery store, right? And you see that like thing in the freezer section, or that
Mhm.
snack that you remember from when you were a kid, and like
Mhm.
that like sparks you. And it's like, I mean, now it's like $4 or $5, but still like it has that nostalgia effect to it. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I think what a lot of it comes down to is you can be any kind of artist, creator, whatever you want to be. But if you expect it to be a bed of roses and to be, just four seasons and private jets,
Mhm, mhm.
I think you got to find a different reality, because I don't really think this is how this world works. There's just a lot of people doing a lot of
Yeah.
different things, and you got to do it the best way you can with what you have.
Yeah.
And if you complain, well, I wish I had better. Well, you don't. So you
That's
got to
right.
work with what you
That's
have.
right. I don't like to spend time complaining. I like to spend time solving problems, or more importantly, finding new creative ways to do things. Because sometimes they're not problems. Sometimes they're just new directions to a better way. Anyway, there's always a better mousetrap, and that's
Improvising
something.
also. Yeah.
Yeah, and allowing for that movie magic to happen. I think if you're someone that wants to come into this thinking it's going to be a bed of roses, you better already be sleeping on a dozen yourself.
Yeah, you're gonna be good at the dermatologist. You're like, why do you got so many spikes in the back?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, well, I was gonna ask you, Summer. Have you had any recent films you're working on, or anything that's coming out?
Yeah, I just had put out this early this year, my first directorial debut. It's called You and I. It's a film I made during the pandemic that I wrote, directed, starred in, produced, edited. And I made it with a small crew of 10 wonderful artists and 3 other actors. So it was a very small crew and an intimate film. Where I'm making my on screen debut opposite a phenomenal actor named Clayne Crawford. He's a veteran actor, has been around for 20 years. He's um, going to be in this new show on Hulu, Chad Powers, which I know a lot of people are excited about. It's a football comedy show, and but we made a tender romance. So it's a story about 2 people that are in their middle age, and you learn throughout the film what their first kind of romantic time together was like in their early life. But you see, like we talked about, how timing can change things, and these are 2 people that life just took them in different directions. So I wanted to write a love story where there's not a villain. The only villain in the story really is time, and that's something that these 2 people can't control. But they get to spend a weekend together, kind of hashing out what did happen, what didn't happen, and kind of redefining a new memory for themselves.
It's kind of a mind twister almost. It's
I hope it's a heart wrenching twister. It's pretty heart wrenching. At least the feedback I've gotten so far is that it's pretty. A lot of people describe it as raw and intimate and feels very real. It's no like sunshine and roses. It's very much 2 people in their middle age, with real problems in real life, trying to do the best things, but then for a weekend they get to kind of reconnect with someone that they've always loved and just haven't always been able to be with.
Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of how heart wrenching it is,
Mm-hmm.
being able to tell those stories. I mean, sometimes on the opposite spectrum, it's like rom coms. Some of the greatest
Mm-hmm.
rom coms are the ones that are comedies, but at the same time, they're so heart wrenching.
Yeah, I don't mind things that are poignant and painful, is kind of the way I describe the things that I make and write. And especially this film, is that a lot of people tell me, like, it is so sad, but life's sad sometimes, and that doesn't mean it's bad or good. It's just
No,
sometimes the way things are. And sometimes you have to just, I wanted to tell a chapter of a love story that'll never end, is the way I put it. And so you feel it's a very slice of life movie. It's a real snippet in this one moment of these people's lives. They spend this weekend together, but through that weekend, you get to know everything that was, and that it can be painful. But I think what's the mature thing is when both of you can look at the pain that is and was and could be, but not let it overshadow the happiness that you may have had together, even if you can't have it forever.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's just a fact of life. It really is.
Mhm. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Very much so. So, if people like, movies like, Past Lives, that was out recently, that is very Academy Award nominated, but also if you even like to go back to like In the Mood for Love or Bridges of Madison County, or if you like the early Richard Linklater films like Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, those character driven romances are, kind of a good vibe of where the film may resonate with.
Hmm. Totally. Well, I love that. I'm really happy that you were able to get that out.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Summer, where can Where can they find, like, for example, a movie? Do you have like a website or
I
social media?
do. I do. I have a website just for myself. It's called summershelton.com, and you can go on there and see all the films that I've made before, including You and I, which is my directorial debut. And you can watch You and I on most platforms. It's available to, Amazon Prime, Fandango at Home, Apple. Um, Pretty much if you can stream it, it's probably able to be found. So if you just Google Summer Shelton, You and I, you'll be able to find links to it. Or you can just go to my website, and I've like hyperlinked places where you can go and rent it to watch. So, and then on social, I have my own social, and then the film, my social is S_D_S. Sadly, I didn't grab my name in time. And then at You and I, the movie, all spelled out, at You and I, the movie is the film's social Instagram. So I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook,
Awesome.
which can give you a clue to my age.
I mean, I'm 26 and I'm on Facebook all the time. I get my friends are like, "Why are you sending me Facebook links?" And I'm like, "I use Facebook." And they're like,
That's
"How
right.
old are you?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Don't age me right now."
Well, if it
I
makes you
feel you.
feel, but if it makes you feel better, I saw Facebook come to life. I saw the internet happen. So I'm one of that wonderful generation that, like, I live before the internet, I live before cell phones, and I live after them. And I'm very proud of that. The one thing that I'm very grateful for in life is that I got to see both sides of life.
I think
And
I think that's
I,
amazing.
I, I wish if I had children that they would experience that too. That's why I like to live on a rural area on a farm. And even though that life is still around, and I used to complain that we only had the 5 stations, like all the kids around me had cable TV, which was the big thing, or they had the big satellite dishes in the yard, but we did not. Like, that was not a priority. Um, and so now, it's like the internet's went down, can't get on the Roku. So I still fight those things, but at least I can, go outside and it's pretty quiet, and try to maintain some peace in life in that way.
I think there is a lot of benefits with technology, and I think
Hmm.
you've explained it better than anyone. Where, I mean, you're able to get your workout. You're able to share your collaborative process. I mean, hey, we're able to podcast
That's
because of
right.
this,
Yeah.
and it comes full circle. It's
Hmm.
We're all in this together,
Yeah.
regardless of what we're doing. We got to accept that we live in an industrial age. It's being able to adapt with it and figuring out ways that we can enjoy whatever life that
Yeah.
we have.
Yeah.
That's it, plain
I
and
could
simple.
have I could have not made the film, number one, without a digital camera because I could not afford the film. And number two, I couldn't have made the film without YouTube because I knew nothing about editing movies. So I watched YouTube videos, how to use Adobe Premiere, and taught myself how to edit. And
Yeah,
so that's things like there's so many times, like, I never realized like how much I relied on YouTube in my life until you just sit down and think about it, like, oh, when you're a filmmaker, sometimes, people say YouTube, you don't really think in certain ways, but I'm like, that is like when we used to have the set of Encyclopedia Britannica, like, on the shelf, like if your family that could go get the set of that, and then you also had a subscription to like um, Time Magazine and Home Mechanics and How To and Southern Living and all these magazines. Like, you can just go on YouTube and watch the how to's, of how to do anything. And like, every time I have to like jumpstart a car, I'm rewatching on YouTube because I'm so paranoid that I'm going to do it wrong. And I'm like, oh, let me just go on YouTube and watch. Or like, wait a minute, which one do I put on first, the red or the black? And then y'all watch 3 YouTube videos to make sure I hear the same thing. And so, like, it's because of that, like, people probably do feel safer out traveling and being able to like have a crutch. But also, like you said, your mom grew up in New York in the 70s. I grew up on playgrounds that were on asphalt lots with steel slides out under the
Oh,
sun,
I
third
had
degree burns.
I had that when I was a kid too, and guess
Yeah.
what? My dad hit his head, and he had staples.
That's right. Exactly. Like,
It was
that's like,
dangerous.
there was not a day you didn't walk into class. Somebody had on a cast. like
Yeah.
somebody fell off
Somebody
some
broke
moving
something. Yeah.
vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Johnny slid down this wrong, broke his arm out, playing with a BB gun, or like, oh, they were trying to chase the cat up the tree with the BB gun, and like they hung a ladder from a limb. Like, God knows what kind of stories that you
King
would
on the
hear.
hill.
Yeah, and that's, I do miss that, like you say, resilience, because I think there's a physical resilience that my childhood gave to me that I don't know that kids always get to experience now, of the whole, like, where's your kid at 10 p.m. Every parent, they got the location, like they're tracking them, like they got devices on them. I'm surprised we don't put chips in our kids like we do dogs.
It's it allows you to be more resilient as a person.
Oh yeah.
To be able to be more creative. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, like, besides podcasting, like, I produce my own music and I do everything on GarageBand myself. I'm self-taught, I use YouTube videos. And I've had people that are like, wait a minute, you made that? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, how did you do that? I'm like, I use GarageBand. And I'm like,
That's right.
And it's just a matter of trial and error. It's where we no longer have the middleman. Like, the idea of the middleman is it's gone.
You can't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, you're the middleman. I'm the middleman. We're all the middleman.
Yeah, you got to believe in yourself and don't be afraid to fail. Like, you might do something wrong, you might get hurt, something might not go right. So what? I bet you learn something. I bet you're not going to do it that way again. And
No.
I think that's with anything in life. And I think that's, whether it's art, movies, fixing your car, that's just what it is.
Yeah. It's the tale as old as time. Summer, I have to say, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I feel like every single time I have filmmakers that have come on, it's like I'm learning more and more and more. It's like, you think, like, a lot about independent and indie films, and then you bring on the filmmakers, and you're like, oh, wow, I really don't know what's actually going on.
Yeah, don't worry.
It's great.
Most people
It's
don't,
great.
and I'm kind of glad that some don't. Just turn it on and enjoy it. Like, I kind of wish sometimes people would just turn on a TV, pick something, and start watching it. Don't waste time. Don't waste 90 minutes searching for something. Just watch something.
Yeah.
Give that artist a chance. Who cares if you don't know who's on the poster and what it looks like? Just try it.
It's honestly,
you can always turn it off.
You can. It's just getting out of your comfort zone and being able to experience something different. And I think like having, that understanding of what it takes to be in that environment is just, it's incredible. It's not for everyone, but if you're able to make that for yourself, I think that's just more amazing than anything else. You've been able to make your own staple, and I think that's incredible.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really grateful that you gave me this opportunity to chat.
Of course.
And hope your listeners might enjoy some of the things that I made, or it'll lead them down a path of searching to find other things that they'll like. So thank you so much. Who knows?
Yeah, my pleasure. And listen, anybody out there that want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us at Lost in the Groove Pod, everywhere and anywhere. So with that, catch you on the next one. Peace out.